All right, so hopefully it's not too windy right now for you guys to be hearing a bunch of like noise. I left my lathe at home. Me and my infinite wisdom, I managed to delete a bunch of footage for the stretching tutorial. So I'm out here redoing it. 'Tis the grind. Anyway though, so I just got done with a training session. Small, very small, tiny, like 20-minute training session. And I'm gonna go stretch and hopefully get this video out to you guys on time. So yeah, I will be right back once I find a spot to stretch, because the sun is dropping and it's dropping quick. Otherwise I would have trained longer if I didn't need to film this session. All right, so I tried to find some grass and I couldn't. I could only find turf. So I'm just gonna make use of that. I'm just gonna stretch here and hopefully I don't miss anything, and hopefully the video comes out the same way I had originally saw it coming out, because I dropped a lot of knowledge in that corrupted footage and it's gone forever now, so yeah. All right, so starting with our pike, this is just my personal stretch routine that I did over quarantine. It's not by any means a professional guide, just kind of like me dropping knowledge to the information I was given. I just kind of did something intuitively and it turns out I liked it and I saw some results from it, and so I kept doing it and I saw even more results from it. So I kept stretching, and yeah, this is what I ended up getting. So I start with my pike. I usually have a foam roller with me. Hopefully I won't need it today. My back and my hamstrings are willing to accept the pike position. I just kind of start in my pike. I don't always put my feet directly together, because I found that for me, my hips don't like it when I pike my feet together. So if I treat it a little bit more like a straddle, I can hit the parts of my hamstring that I feel like I need the most. So you don't need a ton of stretching. The reason that this started is because I found that I had a few hours before bed where I would just kind of watch Netflix to wind down. And I felt kind of guilty about just doing that when I could have been doing something else and watching Netflix and winding down. And stretching is the thing that I chose to do that with. And so I just kind of started stretching every night. And so I stretch for a couple of hours at night when I stretch. You don't have to do that to get flexible and to increase your range of motion. You don't need to go and drive yourself crazy stretching 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You only need, I think, is like 20 minutes a week to increase your flexibility. And then even then, I mean, you could obviously do more, right? The more you do, the better you're gonna get at it. But you should be doing like 3 sets of, I think it's like 45 seconds of stretching to increase your flexibility and to increase your range of motion. Dang, man, I really wish I didn't delete all of that other footage, because I was just spitting this stuff out and now I have to think about the same stuff that I said, and it's not gonna be the same, man. So you need like 3 sets of 45 seconds, a couple of days a week. And scientifically, that's been proven to increase your range of motion and increase your flexibility. So you don't need to stretch for a couple of hours. It's just what I do to wind down, because at this point it's kind of relaxing, but it's still boring. It's kind of relaxing at this point. So after my pike, I go to my straddle, and as you can see, I'm kind of rocking back and forth. I don't do this for any conscious particular reason. I just want to give one side a break as I overstretch the other side, and then vice versa, back and forth. And then this is just kind of how I warm up into it. You shouldn't just stretch to like your fullest, not warm, because it's not really great for your muscles. So I kind of ease into all of my stretches, and prolonged periods of stretching before dynamic exercises and explosive exercises will decrease explosive performance. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually trying to arch my lower back because I have a bad posterior pelvic tilt and it's not very good. And so what I'm trying to do is trying to straighten out my back while being able to still stay down, because as I reach forward, I found that my lower back is rounding. So I'm trying to activate that muscle and still get lower. All right, so the next thing I tend to stretch is my butterfly, not for any particular reason. I just went through some basic stretches that I knew. And with this one, my ankles tend to hit the floor. So what I try to do is I put my hands underneath my ankles and try to keep that bone off the floor, because that's what hurts, and flap my wings. And I also get into a little bit of Pnf stretching here. And I can't exactly recall what Pnf stretching stands for, but it's a thing, I promise. It's a real thing. It's partner stretching. And basically the idea of Pnf stretching is to have resistance against that muscle that you're trying to stretch. So in this case, I'm just trying to stretch my groin. So what I'm doing with my elbows is I'm pushing down into my knees, and with my knees, I'm pushing up against my elbows to create that tension. From there, what I'm doing is I'm actually just trying to give that muscle a small workout. And when I relax, I get a little bit deeper. And that's just kind of how Pnf stretching works. Pnf stretching is great and does have some really good results behind it. The only problem is you have to have a partner dedicated enough to stretch with you, and then you have to be able to stretch them if that's what they want as well. So Pnf stretching isn't super practical. So like you can Pnf stretch your pikes, your straddles, your splits, your whole 9 yards, but it can be kind of dangerous, but you also need a partner. So the reason it's kind of dangerous is because they can overstretch you if you guys don't communicate properly. If you do have a partner that you're willing to stretch with, just be careful with that and make sure you communicate properly on what's too deep of a stretch and what's not, and make sure they're not too overly aggressive with stretching you. And then I'm gonna go into my lotus stretch. And so I don't actually have a really good lotus at all. So what I do for mine is I just kind of get one leg flat and I get the other leg over. And I'm just trying to stretch out my hip flexor basically. So in all of my stretches, I kind of do this intuitively, but as you can see, I'm kind of leaning over to my left. And what that's doing is that's just causing a bit more stretch inside my hip flexor. And I found that it's just like a good way for me to kind of stretch it and relax it, and stretch it and relax it, and stretch it and relax it. And I do this with as many stretches as I can think of to kind of almost Pnf stretch myself. Although I don't know if it technically counts as Pnf stretching. This next one is a really good one for your glutes. And if you have some like lower back problems or like lower back pain, it's also really good for that one. You stick your ankle just above your knee and you sit it up and you just kind of hang out in this position. Now what I do here is I try to get my chest as close to my shin as possible. And just like with my straddle and with my pike, I'm trying to arch my lower back and sit up straight almost. This way it becomes a normal range of motion for me, where I should be able to just kind of do it without feeling a stretch, because in this position, sitting up straight is tough. All right, and we're gonna switch. And again, same thing. I'm like trying to activate muscles, and I'm just trying to like move into different positions to get that range of motion. All right, now for this one, I know this looks like my straddle again, but usually people when they stretch this one, they stretch like this and it pulls their hamstring. But actually what I'm gonna do is I'm actually just gonna take my right leg, I'm gonna take my left hand, and I'm actually gonna just reach over my head. And this actually stretches my obliques, my lats, and my lower back as I start to rotate through this whole thing. So like from here, this stretches my lower back, and then from here, this stretches my lats. The next one we're gonna stretch is our quad. And what I do for this one is I actually take the top of my foot here and I just pull it right behind me. Right, now with this one, there's a few ways you can do this. You can do this with like your leg out or your leg in, depending on what feels most comfortable for you. For me, I just kind of sit in my pike, pull my leg back, and I try to keep my foot close to my butt. From there, I just kind of lay back. Now, this is a solid starting position for a lot of people. Now, what you wanna do here is you see how my knee kind of like wants to bounce up almost. I'm not intentionally pulling it up, but as I ease into it, my knee, see like it wants to rise up. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually rotating my hips upwards, like I'm curling my hips inwards, almost like I'm doing a back tuck, if you understand that reference. Or I'm doing a posterior pelvic tilt. Basically, I'm thrusting my hips forward. And the goal for this one is to try to thrust my hips forward and keep my knee on the ground. And so as I ease into that, it's gonna get lower and lower. So from here, you can just start to lay back. You can go under your elbows. You see how my knee wants to rise back up, right? So I'm gonna scoot my butt forward a little bit. And then as you get really good at it, you can lay back here like this. And the goal is to do the same thing. So a lot of people, when you do this, if you notice my back arch here isn't like this, right? So like this, right? So I'm trying to keep my back flat and my knee, you see how my knee is popping up? I'm trying to keep my knee on the floor. And oftentimes you're gonna see them rotate back and forth. And that's totally fine. But that's just the goal, is to get your back flat and your knee on the floor. And if you get really good at it, you can take both legs and pull them both up, and that'll really give your hips a nice good stretch. And we're gonna do both sides. So this is also a really good one for your hip flexor. As you do this, you can start to move around and squeeze your butt forward, and that'll be really good for opening up all of your hip flexor if you're having any hip flexor issues. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually purposely pulling my stomach upwards and pulling my leg downward, and that's also causing that hip flexor stretch. So here's the stretch for my quad. So I feel this right here, and then I'm gonna pull all of this up, turn my hips just a little bit, and now I'm feeling it in my hip flexor. So usually after I've stretched out my glutes, my hips, my hamstrings, and my quads, I'll go and I'll stretch my abs next and my lower back. And the way I do this is real simple. I just do it with a seal stretch. All right, so one thing, a very important thing is you notice how like I'm not just slumped relaxing here. I want you to like take a look at my shoulders right here. I'm actually gonna push and elongate my neck. All right, now the really cool thing with this one is I don't think a lot of people talk about this, but the only place I'm feeling that is in my lower back right through here. My abs are pretty flexible already. What a friend of mine showed me is that she just kind of goes lower and lower and lower inside her seal stretch, and that gets up more and more up her back. So watch. So this is my normal seal stretch, right? So I feel this in my tailbone, right below my lower back, and then I'm gonna just walk my hands forward. And now that arched weight is in a different section of my back. And a little bit further. And last one. So I know it all kind of looks the same, but I promise it feels very different. And once I'm done recovering from my seal stretch, I go into a child's pose. And basically what I'm trying to do from here is I'm just trying to round my back in the opposite direction, wherever I feel like it needs to be. So even though, so child's pose is like all the way down over here, but if I just relax in child's pose, it really doesn't do anything for me. So almost like tucking and rolling. So let's talk about how to get some shoulder flexibility, some back flexibility, and the wrist flexibility so you can develop your bridge. First things first, for your wrist flexibility, what I would like you to do is you're actually just going to place your palms flat on any flat, not finger, death surface. But this happens to be what I have right here, so you're going to go fingers flat, hands flat, and I want you to lean as far forward as you can, and you're gonna come back. You can do this on the floor, like this, and you can just lean forward and come back. And I want you to do that same thing, but instead of having your fingers forward, I want you to turn them sideways, lean forward, and come on back. Now, while they're here, you can also go left and right. So, one more time. You can go left and right. If you're gonna stretch your wrists this way, you should also stretch them this way. Not because you're gonna be doing anything on this side of your hands, but just so you're equally flexible on both sides. So, we're gonna turn our palms down, and you're gonna do that same exact thing, but this time you're trying to lean as far back as you can, and you don't want your wrists to pop up like this. You kind of want to keep them as down as possible, okay? Now, instead of turning your fingers outwards this way, you can actually turn them inwards, all right, because it's backwards. So you're gonna lean one way, lean the other way, and that's how I developed my wrist flexibility, along with just like years and years and years of doing cartwheels all the time, and like round-offs all the time, and handstands all the time. My wrist flexibility just kind of developed to like have that nice 90, which I'm super comfortable with. So it just takes time and practice. Now, for your shoulder flexibility, you can do a cat stretch. For your cat stretch, you're going to make sure your butt is above your knees, and you're actually going to push your armpits down into the floor. You can do this same thing on any bench or any wall that you have. If you don't want your butt above your knees, or if you don't want your butt in the air in general, I know that could be like a little awkward, especially to do in public. If you walk over here to a wall, you can do that same thing and just start trying to push your head in between your armpits as low as it can go. So here, you again, stretch everything on both sides. So you're gonna go here, now, as far as your back flexibility is concerned, bridges and seal stretches, okay? And if you can't do a bridge, that's totally fine. Do whatever version of a bridge that you can, because any muscle building and flexibility building towards that is going to help. So even if you can't bridge, still try, because if you want a better bridge, you should bridge to get better bridges. If you are still working on a bridge, you can always find a wall just like this one. And what you can do is put your hands on the wall here and actually rotate upside down. This way your bridge isn't so back bendy. And you can walk yourself down until eventually you're in your bridge. So that's a good way to develop your bridge, is to find a wall. This could be in your house. This could be at the park like I am. It could be literally anywhere. Just find a wall and walk your hands down that wall until you can start feeling it in your back. And just try to like mark it and get a little bit lower and a little bit lower and a little bit lower until you're eventually walking yourself down into a full bridge. Actually, I'm gonna do that one more time. I'm gonna change the angle so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know if you can see that whole thing from there. One more time. Here. Now I'm in my bridge. Whenever you do your bridge, you should also do a tuck and roll, and that's just so you stretch your back out the other direction as well, just to match the theme of everything else that we've done today. You know, do it both sides. And that's pretty much all I got for you guys today. That was my whole stretch routine. Just remember, this is what I did to help my flexibility over quarantine, and I saw some results for it. I don't go through literally every single muscle, because I found that a lot of the muscles that I can stretch, I don't really feel the need to stretch. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope this brings you some flexibility, and I hope you got some knowledge out of it. If you did, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. Comment something down below. It really helps us out if you got something out of this. And make sure you hit that bell notification, because we'll be releasing videos every Saturday for you guys at 11 a.m. So happy training and happy Saturday, and stay safe.